Hey, this is Kelly with Two Broads Talking Politics. Be sure to tune in on Tuesday, November 6th, that's right, Election Day, from 8 to 9 p.m. Central on Facebook Live or Twitter Live to catch our live podcast show. We're going to have election results, analysis, some special guests, and maybe a little bit of what are we going to do after the election. Hope to see you there. Hey everyone, this is Kelly with Two Broads Talking Politics, and I am here in the segment with Storm, who is one of the big resistors on Twitter. So, hi Storm.
Hello, how are you?
I'm great, thanks for joining me. So I think it's always fun when I get to talk to people who I mostly know through Twitter because I get to hear their voices, hear how they sound. And I think it's fun to sort of get to know a little bit more about people and how they got to be doing what they're doing. I guess my first question is, when did you join Twitter? When did you start thinking of yourself as a Twitter activist? Do you think of yourself as a Twitter activist?
I absolutely think of myself as an activist. I just happen to do it through social media. I've gotten a chance to do some real life activism as well, but that all started really through the Twitter experience. So that has really brought me kind of out of my shell a little bit, where I never really expected to be kind of the boots on the ground person at all. I started my Twitter account, my Storm account, in early 2017. I spent most of 2016 on Facebook basically screaming at all of my Republican friends and family members, who were posting things that were just, blatantly not true. And I felt like I was running around fact-checking everyone. I live in Tennessee, and the vast majority of my friends are either not political at all or lean Republican or have always voted Republican. So they were really focused on some of the rhetoric that was coming out. Of course, now we know some of that was influenced by foreigners, Russians, and trying to combat those lies that were being told was just exhausting. And honestly, at the end, when Trump won, I just didn't feel like that I accomplished anything. And I'm sure we all felt that same way. Like, I kind of curled up under a blanket for a couple of weeks and thought about what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, and ended up going to Twitter. I had been on Twitter before, but not really, just mostly to, look at the news and creep on movie star lines. And I ended up making an account and falling in with some really cool people. It's a group called Geeks Resist, and they really helped me figure out how to use Twitter as a social platform, as a political platform. And I learned a lot with them, and I'm still with that group. And it's an amazing group of people. And one of the things that we've really focused on is teaching other people how to do that same thing. So we sort of gather up people and we ask them if they want to come join our group, and then we really teach them how to be reasonable, how to not argue with trolls, how to have good sources for their tweets, and to really put out factual information. And I think that is part of why I ended up with a pretty decent sized following, because that's my view, is I try to counteract, some of the partisanship, some of the polarizing rhetoric that's out there, and also just bring more information that's the truth. The truth is under such attack right now. And that's really kind of my focus. And then as we've moved into the election season, it's been quite an evolution for me to really get involved at the campaign level talking with campaigners, talking with campaign staff all over the country, and also in Tennessee. So, Tennessee being such a red state, it's going to be very interesting how Tennessee really turns out in this election. The voter turnout is the highest it's ever been in Tennessee right now. So it looks promising for us, but we won't know until we all vote on Tuesday.
Right. How did you come up with the Twitter name Storm?
Well, again, that was part of that Geeks Resist group. We're all just a bunch of sci-fi nerds. We like fantasy, fandom, superheroes, and I took on that persona to be part of that group. But Storm is really an interesting character in X-Men. If you watch the X-Men shows, she's kind of a nurturing person, even though she's really badass. She has, amazing electrical powers and she can fly. But what she really does is teach. She teaches in the school and she really mothers and nurtures the kids that come in that are sort of homeless or outcast from their own families. And that's sort of the way that I feel like I am as a person. So I was drawn to that part of her personality.
What's been your favorite thing about doing this kind of resistance work?
Wow. I have loved getting to know so many people across the country. And again, being in Tennessee and being a Democrat in Tennessee was pretty lonely. If you had a Democratic sticker on your car, your car could be keyed, or you could get road rage, and you see all these, kind of Confederate flags driving around in cars, and it didn't feel safe to come out even and say, I'm a Democrat. They really made you feel like you weren't an American if you came out and said you were a Democrat. And so to be able to get with other people who feel the same way, who have those, we just care about people. We care about people other than the people that look exactly like us. And to be able to be around that kind of group of people, those amazing people out there, have really helped me find my voice, I think. And this year I've got stickers all over my car and I've got political signs in my yard. And you know what? That's just, I'm out and I'm proud, baby.
I love it. And I think that is so important. I think that's one of the things that happened with a lot of, on Facebook, a lot of the sort of secret Facebook groups that people were joining, which felt empowering, but really we stayed quiet, right? A lot of people didn't know. We didn't talk about politics out in the world as much. I mean, I live in a very blue place, so it was never hard to do here, but I think that's been a really positive thing that's happened.
Yeah, and when the election first happened, I was in one of those private Facebook groups, and the leader of that group kept saying, we should make this public. And so many of us spoke up and said, you don't know, we'll be ostracized at work. We'll be ostracized at our church and at our school if people think that we're a Democrat and if they think that we didn't vote for Trump. So that group was actually kept secret for a while. And then when you go on Twitter, to be able to have an anonymous account makes it feel a little bit safer at first. And, I know that I've really stepped up in real life. A lot of people in real life know who I am, especially here in Tennessee. And that's okay with me now because I feel empowered by having such a strong community behind me.
So Tuesday's coming up. Which elections are you watching the most closely?
Well, of course, here in Tennessee, we're watching the Bredesen-Blackburn race. They're tied in the polls, supposedly. And I hope that Tennessee will go the right way. I have been really focused on quite a few of the Senate races. I feel good about the House. I think the House is going to flip. But there are also some House races that I would love to see win, and that would be Harley Rudai and J.D. Scholten in Iowa. I think that's going to be exciting to watch some of those results come in. In the Senate, we've been really trying to promote, Heidi Heitkamp in North Dakota, Claire McCaskill, Kristen Sinema and of course O'Rourke in Texas. That the whole Texas thing is just been amazing to watch. And what I hope people will come away from is we're not going to win every one of these elections. We're just not. Some are going to break our way, and some are not. But hopefully, over the last 2 years, we've really spent time building our grassroots army, and that should be just the beginning for us. We can't just say, well, we put all this time in and we didn't get anywhere. In Tennessee, we're not going to win a lot of races, but by God, we have somebody running in nearly every race in Tennessee on the Democratic side. That hasn't happened in 20 years. So what we're doing is we're getting out there and we're building bench strength. We're building people who know how to campaign. We're building people who know how to fundraise, who know how to canvass. And when 2020 comes around, that's just going to be a huge step forward.
So I think you answered the question I'm going to end with, which is sort of what happens next? What happens after Tuesday?
Well, we have to make that 2020 vision come true, I think. And that we have to do that by continuing to build relationships. I've heard some talk off and on, the resistance. We're not just the resistance. We have really resisted a lot of Trump's horrible policies, and there is still a need for that, obviously, until we can get him out of office. But we also have to stand for and be for something, and we have to start playing the long game, 2020, 2022, and all these new activists that have been empowered by the fact that you can get on a medium like Twitter and have a group of people that can support you. We have to, as a group, kind of put our arms around each other and teach each other how to be more and more effective so that we can combat misinformation, we can combat foreign influence, and we can, crowdsource democracy for our next step in 2020.
I'm on in this segment with freelance journalist Kaz Wida. Hi, Kaz.
Hello. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks so much for joining me.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
So for our listeners who are maybe not quite as tuned into Twitter as I am, could you tell us a little bit about who you are and sort of what sorts of journalism you do?
I am a freelance journalist. I work for a couple of different publications. Rant is one of them. I also do a column 2 times a month for Grit Post. And mostly I discuss a lot of women's issues, which, are human issues. And we definitely spend a lot of time dissecting Me Too. I've been honored to sort of be a pivotal part of that movement and working alongside a lot of activists in that arena. And then, we do a lot just in terms of delving into politics and analysis, and what's going on with the elections has taken up a lot of my bandwidth recently, as it has for many, many people on Twitter, I'm sure.
So how did you come to be doing this kind of work? Is this the kind of writing that you had assumed you'd be doing? Is this something that has evolved recently?
So my background is actually education. I was a teacher for the better part of 20 years. And I was in kindergarten classrooms. I was in higher ed settings, online universities. So coming into this about 2 years ago was sort of a surprise. And I stumbled into it actually because here in Utah, my congressional district, Jason Chaffetz was my representative. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you remember, very early on after Trump was elected, we had a pretty famous town hall here where everyone was yelling at Jason Chaffetz. And he accused a lot of the people who had attended the town hall of being paid protesters. They were not, of course. We were all constituents. I walked to the school myself. I lived so close where the town hall was held. But I wrote a response to that, apologizing for my congressional representative and promising that we would push him out and do better. That response went viral on HuffPost, and that sort of attracted some attention from a few other publications who approached me and said, "Hey, will you come write with us?" And that's how it all started, because of Jason Chaffetz.
Well, I'm glad something good came out of Jason Chaffetz.
Exactly.
So what have been the stories that have been most interesting, most compelling to you over the past 2 years? That's a big question. Sorry.
It is. I think the story of the resistance is one that I've written about a lot. So one of the things that we did in the aftermath of the election was get pretty frustrated at how a lot of the mainstream media constantly wanted to talk to Trump supporters. They wanted to do profiles on, all these folks who voted for Trump in Ohio and Michigan, and, whether it was really economic, motivations that were at work there, or whether there was some sort of more nefarious racial, divide happening there. And I think out of that frustration, the publications that I worked with and I decided we were going to do this piece that became one of the pivotal things that I worked on during the first year of the resistance. We went out and interviewed online hundreds, probably thousands. I think we got into response totals that were in the thousands of people who had voted for Hillary Clinton. And we wanted to hear about their stories. We wanted to hear about what life was like for them. What were they afraid of? What were they worried about? What were they doing now under this administration, and how were things progressing for them? And that piece became sort of consumed my time for a month or two there. And it's one of the things that I'm really proud of that we did in the beginning. More recently, we've done a lot of work just trying to gather momentum and fight the Kavanaugh nomination. And that was important work for me. As a survivor in the Me Too movement, this was something that was very close for me personally, as it was for a lot of women. And so that's where my focus has been really in the last, 2 months here, 3 months.
So as we go into the election tomorrow, what are the stories that you're kind of watching for? What are the threads that you're following on Election Day?
Well, of course, I know everyone wants to take back the Senate, and that's our long shot, right? It's not looking probable, but we are keeping very close tabs on those key races that are toss-ups. There is a path to the Senate there, to the Senate majority, but it's a very, very narrow one. So, of course, I'm watching that just like everyone else is. I'm also keeping close tabs on the governor races. So we don't think about this as much, but the balance of power in the states is very, very important, because the legislature and, whoever is in the governor's seat that has veto power are the folks who are really going to decide whether or not some of those district maps stand, how we're going to combat gerrymandering, and important things like healthcare. A lot of that, education, medical marijuana, all of those things happen on a state level. And so the long play here really is, even if we can't grab a Senate majority, if we can only get a House majority, if the Democrats can restore the balance of power and break up some trifectas in some key state, we may be able to sort of stem some of the loss there and draw some district maps that will be more fair to constituents in those states. So I'm keeping tabs on those governor races just to make sure that we get what we need there. States like Georgia are going to be very, very important.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things I really want people to remember tomorrow on election night is there are going to be things we lose, right? There are going to be things, like you mentioned, the Senate, things we're probably not going to win, but that we need to see the victories that we made possible through all the efforts that we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you look at the generic ballot, that generic ballot says so much right now. There may be races where there's conflicting polls and everyone's pointing at whichever poll supports what they want to see. But if you look at the generic ballot, that has stayed consistently favorable to Democrats. And it's been that way since the spring when they first began really pushing it in polling. Dems enjoy a 10-point lead on the generic ballot, and that's because of women. And women, there's probably a 30-point, 65. I think this morning, the poll that I was looking at was from CNN, but there have been others, NBC Marist, that say, women are supporting Democrats 65% of women are supporting Democrats across the board. And that gender divide and gap is really driving a lot of what we're seeing on the generic ballot.
So you mentioned the long game. What's next? Where do we go from here? I know everyone's focused on tomorrow, as I am, and then sort of the nap the next day. But what's the long-term plan over the next 2 years?
I think the House majority is going to get in there, and they're going to need to make a lot of noise, especially if we don't have any power in the Senate. In fact, I was looking at something this morning that said it's possible the Republicans may even take up a seat in the Senate. So we're going to have to count on that House majority to sort of thwart the executive power, to be a check on Trump, to open some investigations, and to really hold the line there as much as they can. And then meanwhile, while they're doing that, we need to get busy in states. We need to have states sort of solidify how they're going to handle healthcare, what they're going to do. I know there's a lot of ballot initiatives that I hope pass in regards to gerrymandering and expansions on healthcare and medical marijuana. Medical marijuana is on the ballot in Utah, which is finally happening. And I'm really hoping that we do a lot in terms of what we can do in some key states to really drive forward some of that agenda, even if we can't do it on a national level.
Well, Kaz, thank you so much. We'll put a link up to your Twitter handle and your writing so people can check that out. And hopefully we can have you on after the election at some point to talk about all the terrific gains we've made and how we build the resistance from there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to see more people in office who are women and who look like the average American instead of what we've got now. So that at least I feel confident will happen. We'll see some gains there.
I've been trying to plug to a bunch of female congressional candidates that when they get in office, they should form a mom's caucus, and they all seem into it. So
yeah,
if you see a mom's caucus happen, you'll know where the idea came from.
I'm 100% for that. So.
All right. Well, Kaz, thank you so much. I'll let you get back to what I'm sure is a very busy time for you, as it is for all of us. And we'll all be up all night watching election results together on Twitter.
We will. Thanks, Kelly.
Thanks. I'm on in this segment with returning guest, my friend Holly Figueroa O'Reilly. Hi, Holly.
Hello. How are you?
I'm thrilled to have you back on the podcast.
So happy to be here.
Holly and I have been working on something together for many months now called Blue Wave Crowdsource, and any of you who are active on Twitter probably know a lot about Holly, and I just wanted to get a chance to sort of catch up with you, see how things are going, and what we're looking for going into tomorrow. So let's start with a very brief background for anyone who doesn't remember the previous episode, just a little bit about kind of how you got started in activism.
Just like most people that we are familiar with on Twitter got started in activism. It's like, I kind of feel like we were all in a sleeper cell and we didn't know it. And as soon as Trump was elected, we all woke the fuck up and started organizing. And it just feels like that, because we were all kind of connected. Like a lot of people were connected on Twitter here and there. We all thought Hillary was going to win because the whole world did. And so we were not united at all. But now it's just this united front of, and I don't want to overuse the wave analogy, but like this wall of women, mostly of people who are pushing back against Trump. So that's how I got started. It was right after the election. I was like, no, this isn't how I want my America to be. This isn't how I want my kids to grow up. So that's how. That's it.
Familiar story.
Yeah, I'm sure you've heard it a million times.
In lots of good ways.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me a little bit about Blue Wave Crowdsource and what you guys are doing, what you've been doing for the past, I don't know how many months it is, and what you're doing going into tomorrow.
Okay, well, we started in January, late January, and it just started with me saying, I can't keep all of these candidates straight. I don't know how to organize all of the primaries that I'm keeping track of on Twitter and elsewhere. So I started a Slack to keep track of the candidates. And I asked a couple of people if they wanted to join in with me to, because they were saying the same thing, like, we can't keep track of all of these races. And it just kind of ballooned into this hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of volunteers who are all doing the same thing. Just exactly that, keeping track of the races, promoting the candidates that we want to win. We vetted all of the candidates by district to make sure that they were viable where they are running, and then endorse them. And it just turned into this enormous project. And I'm just proud of it. I'm proud of the work that everyone has done. Going into tomorrow, we're going to get drunk, and we literally are going to get drunk. And we're going to do a Google Hangout that's going to be broadcast on YouTube. A bunch of us are just going to sit with drink in hand and watch the returns come in and talk about how we feel about the returns coming in. We're not going to do any heavy duty analysis because we're not statisticians. We're not pollsters. We don't read tea leaves. We're just going to watch the returns and quote unquote report them as they come in. It's not like anybody can't turn on the TV and get the same information or better information. But
no, it's better because it's you guys.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, I don't know. It'll probably devolve within an hour of us slurring and swearing about Trump and, like most of our conference calls. Yeah, it's just going to be like a conference call, except we're going to broadcast it. What we're looking for tomorrow is hopefully taking back the House and not losing seats in the Senate. That's all we can hope for. I don't think we're going to gain any seats in the Senate. We might switch a couple out, but we're not going to gain any. I don't think. Maybe I'm wrong. I tend to be a little bearish on that kind of stuff. But the House looks good. Fingers crossed. Watching the race with their fingers laced over our eyes while their fingers are crossed, which is really hard to do. And that's all. That's what we're looking at for tomorrow.
I don't think anyone who listens to this podcast realizes just how heavily I have leaned on the Blue Wave Crowdsource website to figure out who I want to talk to.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad that people are using it, because Ann Lee has been working like 12, 13, 14-hour days since we started to get that website together. She's the person who did it, like 99.9% of not building the website, but entering information and data into the website. So that's all her. Mostly I ship post on Twitter and drive traffic to the website, but that she did all of that. And Lena will be on our Hangout tomorrow too. She's the one who crunches all the numbers and does all the spreadsheets that everybody uses. So the three of us and a bunch of other people, special guests, will be up and talking. So I just had to plug them because they never get enough credit, and I just wanted to say that.
And they're fantastic.
They are fantastic.
No, I mean, I don't know how I would have found candidates in all 50 states to talk to if I hadn't had such a handy tool to say, who's running in North Dakota?
Right. Because, you can get the data anywhere, the information anywhere. You can go to the New York Times website and see who is running, but you can't get this concrete, she wrote about every single candidate. And when she didn't write it, one of us, wrote a little something, or she pulled some of the quotes from the candidates' websites. But man, yeah, she did a great job on the site.
So are there one or two races you're going to be watching more closely than any others tomorrow?
I, like everybody else, am watching Abrams and Gillum. Abrams in Georgia, Gillum in Florida. I would love to see Lucy McBath win in Georgia 06 and whoop Karen Handel.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? I don't think that Jans is going to pull it out in California, but I am sure pulling for him to beat Devin Nunes. Wow, there's so many races. I mean, we've covered 600 plus races from the state houses all the way to Senate and everything in between. And the races that are down ballot from the state houses, the county commissioners and not school board. I think we do have a couple of school board. I mean, like really seriously everything. Anybody who applied for endorsement, we vetted them and if they qualified, endorsed them. And then we sought a lot of people out before people started asking for endorsement. So there's a lot of races, but those stick out in my mind just kind of off the top of my head. I am really excited about all the veterans that are running. Christy Houlihan in Pennsylvania, Jared Golden in Maine. There's just so many. Ojeda in West Virginia. Really looking at that race, really hoping he pulls it out and hoping that Manchin doesn't dampen enthusiasm. So, I mean, the top of the races when people are really motivated to come and vote for the top of the ballot, the down ballot always benefits from that. And I'm hoping that Ojeda doesn't suffer from Manchin's. People are just dissatisfied with him. So I hope that Ojeda doesn't suffer. But all of the vets, I have a soft spot for them, and I am really pulling for them all.
And what's next after Tuesday? Just a long nap?
We've already started on 2020. So we probably will take, as a group, we'll take some time. And we definitely need to recalibrate because we learned a lot about what we want and what we don't want and how we want to work and what doesn't work. But after the holidays, I mean, we're going to work on, behind the scenes throughout starting, Wednesday, because we have to crunch all that data and figure out our next steps, right? But then starting in the new year, we'll just really ramp up publicly. But no, we're not going to stop working. I hope that everybody from Blue Wave who's listening to this doesn't go, what the f- is she talking about? We're not going to take a break. Well, I'm not going to take a break. And I know the core volunteers won't either. So
I might take a break long enough to clean my house, but then.
Exactly. I'm going to take a shower, wash my dog, talk to my kids. Maybe.
Kid Schmitz.
Right? Who cares? Whatever. No, I mean, I don't, my kids haven't suffered, but they definitely miss me. So my husband's been amazing picking up my slack for the last 9 months. So let's deliver this baby. And, and then I can, pick up where I left off.
Yes. I think the story of this podcast is to our long-suffering husbands and kids.
Is it really? Have you been talking to a lot of women who are like, oh, God bless my husband?
That's really been the story of the past years, although women candidates we've talked to have been like, yep, we decided to run as a team and that means my husband does.
That's right. That is right. And I think it's exactly the same for us. It was a discussion. When I started just dabbling, it was just me enjoying what I was doing. And then when it started to look like it was going to become a thing, my husband and I talked about it and he said, yeah, go for it. Here, whatever you need, let's, help however I can. And he has, and he's been great.
All right. Well, we dedicate this house win to our husbands.
That's right. Yes, the allies, right?
Yes.
Finally, men. Picking up the slack.
All right. Well, Holly, thank you so much for coming on and talking to me again. And thank you for so much of what you've done for the past, what is it now, 10 plus months?
Something like that. Well, I thank you. Thank you so much. We pull quotes from your podcast all the time when we make graphics for our website and for for our Twitter page and for Facebook too. So we appreciate your interviews and your work. So thank you.
A great symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, agreed.
All right. Well, thanks, and I'll be raising a drink with you tomorrow.
Okay, great. See you then.
I'm on in this segment with Jennifer Fisher, who is the founder of Postcards for America. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
We will see. To be determined yet.
Yes. So how did you get started with Postcards for America? What is it and how did it start?
Well, it's a way for everyone to stay on top of their representatives at all levels was my idea. And it got started after the 2016 election, very shortly after, like a week, because I just saw darkness on the horizon and wanted to do something for it. And there was a lot of talk then about flyover states, and I thought, I don't think that's actually a thing, because I know there are all kinds of people in all states, and I want the ones who are rural or who, are older or disabled or can't get to a city for a protest to be able to do something. And everybody's got a mailbox, and postcards are pretty. And when they come into congressional offices or your state rep's office, they tend to be read because they look at the photos and then they feel kind of like they must turn it over. And they like them because it's single issue. And I was just looking for a way to help and to get people to focus on what might get their representatives to do what they want.
What are some of the postcarding campaigns that you guys have done?
It's an individual thing because everybody targets their own representatives is the idea. We've done a few campaigns. We did one about tax returns to a New York Times reporter who, ended up doing a story, and we did campaign-wise. One of the things, I don't do any actions to the White House. This is all sort of grassroots, but we did do one time, which was addressed to President Steve Bannon. After a friend of mine was dating someone that used to work with Donald Trump on whatever that show was I never watched. What was that? The one I mean.
Apprentice.
The You're Fired, that's the one. And said that he had gotten very jealous of his second in command, some woman they called the Ice Queen or something. And I thought, oh. And he had ended up letting her go over that. So that was the idea behind that. But mostly it's on issues. I did a lot of research on congressional bills and things that were trying to be pushed through and public commenting, and I just give that information and, everybody the address. I have a big list of the district addresses for all the representatives in Congress and then links to state legislatures, and I just try to make it as easy as possible, put it out there, suggested message, just get people to participate and pay attention. And at that time, right after the election, honestly, a lot of people didn't even know what they could do, who to tell, who to talk to, and so it was sort of a focus for that. It was before Indivisible, who came out and then did with that fantastic guide, which really helped a lot, and before Women's March, so it was, those all gave it a great big boost when they came out.
And am I right in remembering that Tony the Democrat from Postcards to Voters actually started by seeing what you guys were doing?
Yes, he had the idea himself, and then he came to me because I already had, 5,000 postcarders in my group, and said, it's not exactly what you're doing, but what do you think? And I thought that he was doing it originally for John Ossoff in Georgia 6, and I think his original plan was just to stick with that. But I was like, Tony,
Little did he know.
Little did he know, and he seems to have, not ever been angry with me about it, so that's cool. But so, they jumped on it, and it's been a fantastic idea, and he's got a certain set of amazing skills, and it really took off. But yeah, it launched through, initially with his idea through Postcards for America Facebook group, and now it's just taken off. So it's wonderful.
And is a lot of your connecting with people through Facebook? Is more of it on Twitter now? How has that gone?
It's almost entirely on Facebook because originally I wasn't even doing any Twitter. I think I only started this year in the campaign year, because I thought people that postcard might not be people that tweet, that this might be a different a different set of people. But it turns out that there are some overlaps. So I have started doing Twitter more, yeah.
And you've been doing things on Twitter like these massive threads of people who are running for Attorney General or Secretary for State.
Yes, I have. Yes, I'm all about the knowledge is power, so I just try to give it. So I rather, some might say obsessively, did graphics for every single Democratic candidate for Congress, for governor, for attorney general, for secretary of state, and a few others, and did giant threads for each state. It was just, it was a year more after the GOP did the tax scam. Mm-hmm. It seemed to me we really needed to that there's some really weren't listening. I think we managed to pressure most of GOP Congress for about a year into representing, in a way, perhaps the majority of their constituents
would like. Or not being
terrible,
maybe.
Not being terrible. And then I thought, a bunch of these really have to go. So what can Postcards for America do towards that? Push postcards to voters, and what else can we do? And this was my way of trying to just get the information out there on every election matters, every vote counts, so every single Democratic candidate should have a little voice. So that's what I was trying to do. I don't have that following, so I'm not sure how many people saw it, but it's out there.
So what are some of the things then that you're going to be watching tomorrow as election returns start to come in?
Everything is so close and so tight, and there's all sorts of odd hanky-panky going on. So I'm going to be scouring for any sort of election integrity, voter suppression issues, and trying to amplify those, because once we shine a light on them, they seem to retract a lot on what they're attempting to do. Little things like shutting down the public transportation in that county, losing, early voting ballots, just general things that we can with hashtag WaveCastXX can amplify and hopefully influence in that way. Rides to the polls, just sort of keep a finger on the pulse, see what's happening, and really try to tip the balance wherever we can, if we can.
And so do you think you feel more or less optimistic about the country than you did the day after the 2016 election?
That horrible blur day where I hadn't slept the night before. Do I feel more optimistic? I feel like I have been able to encounter a whole lot of wonderful people, probably more than I did before all this, who are willing to work towards equality for all. I am at the same time kind of gobsmacked. I was a little caught off guard. I used to work in a GOP White House, and I knew good Republicans, and I don't know what the heck happened to that party. Mm-hmm. And that's been a bit depressing. But I'm not sure. Ask me again the day after the election. Cautiously optimistic. I have hope, always hope.
And so what do you think is going to be your plan after the election? Does Postcards for America keep going in its current form? Do things change? What are you sort of
it will
planning?
Change. I mean, one of the things I was trying to do is also make people, get people to realize that state representatives are so very important. So bit by bit, we're getting state groups up and running too. The idea is that eventually every state will have a group that focuses on their state representatives, and that none of us fall asleep behind the wheel again, that we keep on them and keep noticing what they're doing until they're doing things for everybody, basically. So I believe I'll take some poll, see what everybody's interested in, but people are so much more educated now on contacting their own Congress people. When I started, just trying to convince people that was the right idea and they shouldn't just call and shout at Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan, that they had to contact their own people, part of the endeavor, and I really don't need to do that anymore. So we'll just see, and we'll see how the Congress is shaped, and who's left to badger, and go from there. But we're not giving up. We'll move. We'll roll with the times and see what we can continue to do.
Excellent. Is there anything else you want to make sure we talk about?
Wavecast, I guess, which we're both participating in, which is a great idea, which I'm sure you're explaining in other segments.
Yes, and people should catch the episode from a few nights ago now. The days are all running together. Where Nick and I talk more about Wavecast. So I'll put a link up for that one too.
Oh, great. Perfect. Wonderful. Yeah. Thank you for everything you're doing. I've enjoyed what cast of yours that I've gotten to hear. I certainly heard Tony's.
Yeah. Everybody heard Tony's.
Everybody heard Tony's.
Anyone who has ever listened to our podcast has listened to that episode, I'm pretty
Excellent.
sure.
He sent me a link, and then I didn't listen for like a few days. Then he said, so what'd you think? And I'm like, let me get on that.
Tony was quite good at
yeah, he's very eloquent. Yeah, it's great.
All right. Well, Jennifer,
all right.
Thank you so much for speaking with me and for doing everything you're doing. It's really incredible.
We're trying. Thank you very much.
I'm here with Tokyo, who runs the website Political Charge. Hi, Tokyo.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm excited, nervous, all the things that you would expect the night before midterms.
Yes, we all are, I think. So maybe we could start by talking about your website, Political Charge. Can you talk about sort of how you got started with that and what you're doing with it?
Yeah, sure. Honestly, the website is an outgrowth of my Twitter account. So, after the election, like so many people, sort of foundering and upset and so on and so forth. But I very quickly learned that if I channeled that nervousness and that agitation into action, that I felt better. And so it was honestly something I just started to do on my Twitter account. I found, as more and more of these websites or apps or these other things, people, saying, hey, let's fight this labor secretary for nomination, right? Or let's, the Muslim ban is happening. Let's how can we help? That people were really wanting to help, but not everyone has the same ability or time, for that matter, to figure out what to do. And honestly, that's what I ended up doing. I ended up finding other people on Twitter who also, like me, wanted to help, and we would collect information. And I just sort of ended up packaging it, I guess, as my Twitter account kept growing and growing. And at some point, someone mentioned that said, you have such great information that's, actionable. People want to be able to do this, but it's hard if you're not already on Twitter to share that information. Have you ever thought about putting this on a website? Which I hadn't, but that was the impetus. And that happened, a year ago, or I guess a year ago, December. And thankfully, my husband knows a thing or two about running websites. So he helped me get set up. And in January, Political Charge was born.
That's excellent. What are the kinds of things that you're putting on there?
So, a lot of people, there's a lot of really great newsletters and sort of checklists and action websites out there for all the things that kind of come up with this administration, just policies and rules and votes that are coming up. But the one thing I didn't see being covered quite as much were the elections. Like, I don't know about you, but certainly I don't think I realized just how many elections are happening at any given point in time. I mean, I put this on my About page on Political Charge, but the question that I ask is, how often are there elections? I did a poll once on Twitter, and it was kind of funny. There's, plenty of people that thinks it happens once every 4 years, right? So every presidential election. That thankfully there's a bunch more of us now that realize, oh, wait, it's at least every 2 years because of midterms. But the actuality of it is, almost every Tuesday in this country, there is an election of one shape or another. So I got really, really engaged with special elections. So as, people were being plucked out of, cabinet seats, for cabinet seats and whatnot, there were all these special elections. And of course, there's big ones like when Jeff Sessions became the AG and, we had that big election that we won. Yay, Doug Jones, down in Alabama. But it wasn't just the big ones, in state legislature seats. They're constantly coming up for one reason or another. And I just, honestly, I'll be completely honest, I didn't realize they were happening as often as they were. So the Political Charge really is of letting people know what's going on, as far as the administration and how we can fight back these policies and votes and laws and so on and so forth. But the other part of it is really focusing on being active as a voter, being aware that there are a lot of special elections happening at any given point in time. The importance of those seats in your state legislature or in your local community, like your mayor or, a city manager. And then certainly, just as we were heading into the midterms, more and more information about how people can help in small ways, right? I figure if you're a big activist, you don't really need Political Charge to know, how to canvass because you do it all the time. But a lot of people getting involved in these kinds of activities for the very first time. How do you phone bank? What does it mean to canvass, and what does it really look like? Tell me what it's like before I even try it. And there's information out there that I was able to just gather and, talk to other activists and put it in. I usually try to keep my posts pretty short, unlike me talking on and on right now, to keep things, short. People are busy, but there's actionable information. And I just hope that people read these, share it with other people. And then maybe somewhere down the line, someone takes action and they decide to phone bank for the first time or walk into a candidate's office and, hey, I'm here. Let me help. So that's what I'm going to do.
So over the past year or so since you've had this website up, what are some of the things that have been sort of the most compelling things that you've ended up writing about? I know you've done some interviews. What are the things that sort of really stand out to you?
So, that's such a good question. I'm trying to think back of all of the things that I've had. So one is when I have sent out information about how to take action in one way, shape, or form. People are upset about something. I usually get a lot of comments, and I can see that people are sharing the information. The one that's most recent that really just blew me away was the family separations, right? When we first started to get word that these things, that young children are being separated from their families at the border, not unsurprisingly, there was this great uproar around the country about that. I was certainly just deeply personally upset by the stories I was reading, these activists going to the border and what they were trying to do. But it was hard to get your hands around what it was that we could do. And so, again, I just did my normal process, and I went out to all the different websites, and even the UN had said something. So I kind of cobbled together something that we could do, and I put just a blog post about family separations. What is it that can you do? And what happened is I post in the morning, so I go 6 o'clock in the morning. And when I came home from work, I was checking on my statistics and realized that it was doing way better than most of my normal posts. I mean, like to the tune of 10 times better than any of my normal posts. I'm like, well, good. I'm glad. I'm happy that the information is getting out. When I woke up the following morning, I realized I had a viral post on my hands, and it was just this massive. Ultimately, I had well over 300,000 shares on that, and it was still to this day I can't believe, because political charge. I'm very proud of it, but it's not that big. And that post just absolutely took off, but it also really is solidified for me that there are a lot of people out there that do get upset about these things, and they want to help. And if I can be a little part in helping them, guide them to how they can take action. And most of my actions are, it's writing an email or, writing a letter or making a quick phone call, making a small donation. These are all things that can be accomplished pretty quickly, but they add up. And so, again, I was, very pleased with that particular post and that people cared so deeply about that. But, that's certainly one that stands out. A viral post definitely stands out.
So as we head into tomorrow, election night, what are some of the things that you're really going to be watching for?
Oh, man, I'm trying to keep my fingers on so many different things. I've had to create a couple spreadsheets for myself. So, like everybody, we're all interested in whether or not we being the Democrats, are we able to flip a House of Congress, right? As I sit right now, there's just certainly a lot of great polling that indicates that we should be able to take the House. But I just keep reminding people on my blog, let's ignore the polls, right? Until we know what the votes actually are at 8 o'clock on Tuesday, we just keep fighting for every last vote that we can get. So I'm certainly looking at, I hope that we flip one of the houses of Congress. I'm more hopeful that we can flip one and not two, but that's kind of where I'm at right now. But the other thing I'm really looking at, one of the issues that I care really deeply about is voting rights and just, the counterpart of that, which is voter suppression. And so I'm really looking tomorrow to see what happens in control of the state. So both the governor's mansions, we have 36 governors that are going for election tomorrow. And then we also have a lot of the state houses and state senates where a lot of seats are at stake. And in many cases, we have 26 states where all three, so that means the governor, the state house, and the state senate are run by the Republicans. And we have a really good shot tomorrow, either by flipping the governor's mansion or one of those two houses, that we can break what we call those trifectas in a lot of red states. So how many can we flip? I don't know. But even if we're able to break some of those total control states, that's going to help us a lot in 2020 when we have to redistrict, right? So when, the census comes around, we're going to be getting a lot of information about where the population is and isn't. And that starts this once in a decade process of redistricting and, redrawing district lines. And if the Republicans have total control, you all know about gerrymandering, it's only going to get worse. But if we have split control, there's a much better chance that the district lines that get drawn will be much more fair. So that's really one of the things that I'm going to be spending a lot of time trying to figure out tomorrow night.
Yes. All night, probably.
And well into Wednesday and possibly for the following week.
Yeah, that's the part I'm not looking forward to.
No, some is definitely going to drag on.
So then what's next for you after the election? Is Political Charge going to keep going in roughly the same format? Do you have any changes planned?
So I have thought a little bit about that. Really what I see, though, is certainly if we take a House of Congress, things will be a little bit different, but we still have Trump in the White House. We're still going to probably have a Republican-controlled, probably Senate, let's be honest. And there's going to be a lot of things that we're still going to have to fight against. So I could see Political Charge, certainly for the next year, kind of swinging back to where I originally started, which was just informing citizens of, what is going on and how they can make a difference by calling their members of Congress or their state legislatures to change things that they don't like. Because, Trump is Trump, and he's going to do things that we don't like. His policies are unpopular. Republican policies are unpopular. So we're going to have a lot of work on our hands, no matter what happens tomorrow. And then certainly the year after that, I can see starting to really rev back up the election part of the website, because 2020 is, 2 years away, and that's going to be a big fight too. So again, I'm always going to have those two focuses, but whether we're heading into an election year or not sort of depends on the focus of it. But there's still a lot of work ahead of us, no matter what happens tomorrow.
Yeah. All right. And then last question, how'd you get the pen name Tokyo?
Give a secret away. I was born and raised in Tokyo. So that's where the nickname comes from.
All right. Well, thank you so much for talking with me, and thank you for everything you've been doing over the past year.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Kelly, for all the word that you're getting out too.
Thanks. It's a labor of love for all of us.
It is indeed.
I'm on in this segment with Amanda Blunt, who is a retired combat veteran and is an activist. Hi, Amanda.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Oh, great. Just getting out there, getting the vote out.
Yeah. So it seems like a new thing this year that we have retired combat veterans who are outspokenly Democrats. So have you always been political?
When you're in the military, you can't be openly political as a lot of us would like to be. I've been as political as I possibly could in the positions that I have held. Most military people, you can't be political in your uniform. You can't go to protests in your uniform. So a lot of times it's just easier to not openly say you're political. But veterans, yes, veterans have been political for years. Veterans have spent, many decades and many wars being political. You could see it during the Vietnam Veteran War where veterans came back and were very political. So it is becoming more open. Mm-hmm. So that is something that we've seen a lot because of social media and because of podcasts like yourself. Veterans have a louder voice now. So that helps.
So what are some of the issues that are kind of driving your activism? What are some of the reasons that you got more politically vocal when you could?
The main reason why I originally became politically vocal was medical marijuana. A lot of veterans need medical marijuana to wean themselves off of pain medications, and it helps with PTSD. It's been proven time and time again in other countries that it helps with multiple sclerosis, migraines, TBI, PTSD. A lot of these issues, a lot of these medical conditions not only affect veterans but civilians alike. So even though I started promoting medical marijuana for veterans, I soon realized that civilians need the same opportunity for medical marijuana. So that was my original jump into political activism when I retired from the military. But with the extremism of religion, and of course I'm fighting for equal rights for women and marginalized groups, I really am passionate about the separation of church and state. Even though I am a spiritual person and I've followed religion my entire life, I was brought up in an abusive religious environment. And those type of environments should not cross over to the state, because you can't make decisions based on one religion when there's thousands of religions out there. Which religion are you going to choose to make laws with if there's thousands of them? So for me, there's a number of reasons, but marginalized groups, LGBTQ, people of color, women, just many groups who are marginalized to the side need help. Of course, our immigrants need help. And the extremism of racism and religion have really ignited my passion from the religious abuse that I endured and survived through as a child.
What are some of the things in, this experience of increasing activism and being outspoken and being on Twitter? What are some of the things that the stories that have been sort of most interesting, compelling, heartwarming to you in the past year?
Oh, goodness. Well, I've got to get some tissues out for this one.
Yeah.
Some of the ones that I've seen, of course, so the Me Too movement and the Church Too movement along the side of Me Too movement. And it talks about the abuses that you see and that are covered up in religious organizations. And then, of course, the Me Too movement, when you hear all these women and talk about their experiences, and it was just emotionally draining, but it was also emotionally freeing, because people from different backgrounds, you could, and you wouldn't believe that they had been abused before. Doctors, lawyers, Congress people, just constantly saying, yes, this happened to me too. You're not alone. I found that to be very freeing for our country. I thought the women coming together just made me so emotional, because as a child, I grew up, I'm 51, I grew up in a time before when women, there were certain jobs women couldn't do. There were certain jobs that women, once they were pregnant, they were fired for becoming pregnant. And then also, I was raised before the 1993 law, which forbid men from raping their wives. And even today, when you saw one of the attorneys on CNN or Fox or one of those mainstream media shows, he even thought that the law was still in place that you could rape your wife. Believe it or not, that law was only put in place since I've been alive. So to see this movement over and over and over again push forward, and to see all the women who have started running for office and are taking up the fight from their ancestors, it's just so emotional and so moving, and I'm just ready to go out and just do whatever I can to help them. A quick background on my background on politics, though. My great many greats uncle, he actually signed the Constitution of the United States for North Carolina, and he founded, or not, he founded, quote, the state of Tennessee. I guess you can't really found a state that belonged to Native Americans, but he was the first person to name it as a state. Then his brother became the governor, and they're my relatives. He was highly political. I mean, he wasn't this quiet wallflower that didn't do anything. So it's kind of in my blood. One of my relatives started a rebellion against taxes. I was born on August 18th, which is also the ratification of women's rights to vote. So, and my teachers brought that up all the time when we studied that part of history. So it's like I was born to do this. I was born to be an activist.
I love it.
I love seeing the little girls being raised in a different environment. And all little girls, all different colors and races and religion together at the Women's March just made me want to cry because, you know, during the civil rights era, you know, even 70s and 80s, even as late as the 80s, you didn't see a lot of little kids spending the night with each other as, you know, in like first, second, third grade. You couldn't go over to someone else's race to their home and spend the night, especially in the South. So to see all these little girls out there at the Women's March from all these different backgrounds, holding hands and being together, it just gave me hope for a new future.
That's beautiful. So what are the things you're watching for as we head into tomorrow?
I hope, and I'm really hoping, that Justin Canoe, District Tennessee 7, I hope he will win against Mark Green. Mark Green is an extremist who was so extreme he didn't get selected in Trump's administration. So we're really hoping that Justin Canoe for District Tennessee 7 will win. That is my big one. Of course, the other big race in Tennessee is Bredesen against Marsha Blackburn. We want, of course, and that is a neck and neck election right now. That is, everyone needs to get out and vote in Tennessee for that election. It is so close. It is so close. They can't call it at the moment. And I'm glad they're not calling it because we need everyone to get out and vote. I don't care what the weather is. I don't care what's going on. You need to get out and vote because we need Bredesen to win that seat. Tennessee has had a recent history of Republicans running safe races because they have never had much opposition. So because they haven't had much opposition, Republicans haven't had to help the people of Tennessee in great ways. They haven't had to take risk. Like I told someone the other day, Mark Green, Marsha Blackburn, those type of people, they punch down. They hurt the people, and they use their powerful positions to punch down at people, and then they take credit for helping just a little bit, helping a little bit here, helping a little bit there, and yet when they can make big decisions to help a large amount of people, they don't take that risk, and they hurt the entire state of Tennessee. Mark Green voted against a Medicaid expansion, which hurt 300,000 Tennesseans. Even though Governor Haslam voted for it, Mark Green voted against him and hurt 300,000 people. Marsha Blackburn voted against broadband in rural areas, which hurt a lot of people who go to school online, who homeschool their children, who are farmers, and who need fast internet in the country. You wouldn't think how many farmers need fast internet, but they do. They need it for weather updates. They need it for their crops rotation and where to sell their crops. So these are things that people don't think that rural people enjoy or actually need, but we do. So Marsha Blackburn and Mark Green do not represent the rural people in Tennessee at all. And in fact, they're voting against the programs which could help rural Tennessee. So those are the big races I'm looking at right now. We want Bredesen to win, and we want Justin Canoe to win. Yes.
Awesome. And then what's going to be next for you after tomorrow? What do you think?
Well, let's see. Right after tomorrow, I'm going to sleep for like 2 days.
Yes.
I think I'm just going to collapse for like 2 days. What my plans are is to continue activism. I enjoy environmentalism. So we have a battery plant coming to Clarksville, which will add pollution to our area. Clarksville, Tennessee, and Montgomery County is one of the most polluted counties in the entire country. We have that distinction. Yay! Now we have a battery plant coming to our city, which will even make more pollution in our city. So we have a meeting tonight discussing it with the city council commissioners. That particular issue will be next on my agenda to either fight or hold them accountable. So if you can't win an issue, your next job is to hold the people accountable. And that's what my main message to people who are voting tomorrow will be. If your candidate does not win, do not take that as a loss. You work hard to hold them accountable to your values, to the values of the people of your state, to the values of the people in your district. You hold them accountable for taking care of people. That is your next job. And not just for the people that maybe you disagree with. If the person you vote in and the person you agree with wins, you also hold them accountable. You spend the next 2 years making sure that they uphold the values that they ran on. So that's going to be my job for the next 2 years.
All right. Absolutely. Well, Amanda, thank you so much for speaking with me. Maybe we'll have you back on after the election to talk in a little more depth. But I'm really excited about everything that's going on in Tennessee this year. I think you guys are really kicking ass.
Thank you for having me on, Kelly, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thanks. You too.
Thanks for listening to Two Broads Talking Politics. Our theme song is called Are You Listening? Off of the album Elephant Shaped Trees by the band Immunuri, and we're using it with permission of the band. Our logo and other original artwork is by Matthew Wethlin and was created for use by this podcast.